And welcome everybody once again to the PCS Spring Playoffs. Oh my goodness, we are so excited to get this one underway because after a couple weeks of waiting, we are back with PSG Talent on the Rift taking on Deep Cross Gaming for tonight's best of 5. Hey everybody, I am Pyrotechnics, joined today on this broadcast by Nightstar. Before we get to the introductions of these teams, Frank, we do have to take a moment to thank our sponsors. Of course, as always, they are CTBC Bank and Caliber, and also a special shout-out to our organizers and broadcast partners, Harry Live, Riot Games, and Garena. Thank you so much for making the PCS Spring Split possible. Nightstar, how you doing, man? Are you ready to see PSG Talent back?
Dude, I am so ready to rumble because PSG are finally back onto the Rift. It's been a bit of a long time coming, right? Because they had that number 1 seed locked up. That means they didn't have to play last week. And this is a team that I think when you give more time to prepare is even more scary.
Yeah, that is something that other teams are going to have to make note of. I mean, it certainly didn't look as hard yesterday because J-Team are not necessarily that squad, and CFO were able to read them like a book. But Deep Cross are going to have quite the challenge going up against the defending champions here of the PCS. They may have a different face in the mid and jungle, but they are no less dominant, dropping only 2 games over the course of the regular season, neither of those to Deep Cross Gaming. And this is a team that has found some answers, as we saw in the opening round of playoffs, up against the likes of Beyond Gaming. I'm definitely looking at Nesty in the mid lane, finding some more, shall we say, conventional champions. The man can play Ahri, it turns out, and that's not a bad thing. But let's see how things have shaken out so far. It all started with Deep Cross getting a 3-1 over Beyond Gaming to get to this point here today. We've also seen CFO just blaze their way through both MFT and bulldoze through J-Team. So the winner here today will be facing off against them in the winner's bracket finals, or we should call it the semifinals. It all amounts to the same thing in the double elimination top side of the bracket. Meanwhile, down bottom, Frank Esports 3-0 over MFT. They'll be facing off against the loser of today's match. And on the very bottom of the bracket, Beyond Gaming and J-Team will battle it out to face off against the winner of that one, and so on and so forth. So we've really had it start to winnow down here, Frank, but it is looking like only the strongest will remain, as is intended.
Absolutely, and we've had just a couple of 3-0s, and
just a few.
Hopefully, I would hope that this series does not go the same way, because we would love to have these two very macro-oriented squads go the distance, because it's just such a really fun chess match that could just unfold during the series, both in game on Summoner's Rift and also in the draft phase outside of the Rift.
That is very true. I think it could very well go the distance. Although, would you be mad if I told you that this was the one series I did predict to be a 3-0? I think that PSG looked very strong. Deep Cross, I think leading into the playoffs, looked a little bit worse, but I'll be honest, they surprised me in how strong they were able to play out against the likes of Megabank Beyond Gaming. I think we really, in that series, got to see some of the limitations of Minji's champion pool, but we also, on the flip side, got to see what Deep Cross can do with a more unlocked Nesty. Still some issues remain for this squad. I think they have exploitable bot lane in the laning phase. That's something that PSG will probably look to play through. I think Hana doesn't have the same level of pressure as some of the other junglers in our league, and we'll have to see if they can pick that up. But all the same, this was the team that came out the gates swinging. They were prepared for their opponents, and they certainly are a cerebral squad. So they've had a little time to prepare for PSG as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think DCG are one of those teams that do better in a best-of-5 format because you can be more adaptive. However, first team, PSG, the number 1 seed coming into playoffs, I don't even know if they will show us a lot in game number 1, just because of the fact that they did 2-0 DCG during the regular season. I think they are more likely to just kind of play things pretty standard, and if they do drop a game, or if they get tested in game 1, that's when we might see some of the extra spice come out.
Absolutely. We'll have to see if PSG do reveal cards early. I think you're right. They probably won't unless they're forced into it. Hanabi up in the top lane, man. He's playing on dark mode right now. Someone get that guy some lights installed.
Yeah, He's been put in the closet, apparently.
Yeah, it's all a strategy. They're hiding the picks, and we'll see if Leaky can match him in that pressure game. He has been the big top carry for Deep Cross Gaming, but here they are, along with Leaky, Hana, Nesty, Kriskata, and Woody. This is a team that I feel like you look at just some of the champions and compositions they've played. They are one of the weirdest and most wonderful teams in our league, and they have definitely been able to flex on a number of their opponents. But I think there have been a lot of pleasant surprises, maybe a couple of things we'd like to see them work on, but this is a team that knows what it wants to do. And unfortunately for their opponents, they don't know what Deep Cross wants to do. They definitely play things close to the vest until the champions are revealed.
Yeah, for sure. I think DCG, when it comes to drafts, is probably the most flexible. And also for PSG Talon, they are a squad that, again, they don't play a ton of stuff, but I feel like it's for different reasons. In the fact that they haven't been challenged to go outside of the box.
Exactly.
So Deep Cross exists outside of the box. PSG are very much inside.
Well, we don't know if they're comfortable outside, and I want to see if Deep Cross can push them to that. And obviously, the man in the mid lane, Nesty, he's the one who likes to live the most outside the box, but it is the bot lane that I really want to talk about, because this very much is youth versus experience. And yes, there is only a 3-year difference in the actual age of these players, but Unified's been playing on the big stage for 6 seasons, and Kriskata's a true rookie. And this guy is absolutely tearing it up. Yes, his laning phase has fallen off in recent weeks, and that is something that is a cause for concern up against the likes of Unified. However, the fact that Kriskata can tangle with the best the PCS has to offer is quite encouraging for the future of this young rookie.
Yeah, absolutely. Kriskata having a full regular season split under him, unlike the likes of Shun, who we also have seen really explode onto the Rift. But for Kriskata, his role isn't necessarily to be that early mid-game carry. It's more about the late-game insurance. Put onto it Aphelios quite a bit lately. He's also gets his hands on the Jinx more often than not, too. And it's all about that scaling factor for Kriskata, making sure if the game does hit 30-35 minutes, he's there to shred through these late game team fights.
Absolutely, and I do think that is the reason that we expect this matchup to be very explosive. We know that when they last met, I do believe Kriskata and Woody got 2v2'd very early on, and that started the trend downward for Deep Cross and upward for PSG. But PSG should definitely look to challenge early in the bot side. They are also taking a number of powerful picks that allow quite a lot in the way of engage and counter-engage away from Deep Cross. That is the signature Twisted Fate of Nesty and the Renata Glass that Woody has piloted to so much success. Much more standard bans, of course, on the opposite side, with Zeri being kind of the perma. And PSG take the Aphelios away from Kriskata too. I wonder if they're hoping to lock him into a Jinx pick.
Yeah, and the Aphelios pick was certainly a pick that Kriskata relied upon in the Beyond Gaming series quite a bit. He played 3 games of it. They ended up winning, I believe, all 3 games of it as well. So it gives him a bit more laning power with this champion, and it also allows him to continue to scale throughout the game as well. But PSG, with this focus onto the Aphelios, and they go ahead, lock themselves in the Xayah, mostly because Xayah, one of the most powerful picks at the moment. The MF is a great answer, but if you do want to go into something like a Jinx, she doesn't have a great lane matchup into the Xayah, which is why I think PSG locked it in first.
Yeah, it's a Deep Cross find the answer for themselves, and Kriskata just says, that's okay. I don't have to play the Jinx. I can do other things. It'll be his first misfortune of the split, and I would love to see the Rakan takeaway here, because this is also PSG kind of flexing the last time these two teams met. That was the lovers bot lane of Unified and Kaiwing with Xayah Rakan, and it definitely flexed on him a bit, but instead they opted to give Hana his first Viego, I believe, of the... Well, no, actually, he played it, I think, in the Beyond matchup. But we're seeing a bit more of a carry style for Hana now. This is an interesting change-up for sure.
Yeah, Hana did play a game of the Viego. And this said, hover is not going to happen, as it will be the Hecarim instead. Hecarim's still pretty powerful champion, gives you a lot of early tempo, and the Rakan lock-in also makes a whole lot of sense here. But a quick Nautilus answer is, I don't hate it. And in this first phase, it seems pretty generic to me as far as openings go, draft-wise.
Yeah, again, PSG not necessarily needing to show a lot in the way of their cards. Deep Cross going to try and focus the rest of the bans, it seems, on Bay by taking away the Vex he's had some success on in the last couple of weeks of the regular season. Deep Cross, I mean, I think it's more surprising that they went for something a little more standard. I guess the MF is an adaptation. We'll have to see how that laning phase does play out, because I do think this game will hinge pretty heavily on it. And both teams focusing so much on the bottom side priority early on does tell you how these two squads play. But ban-wise, it's all about mid, getting rid of the Galio for the global, the roams. Gnar also banned, and I do think that's worthwhile against Hanabi. He is probably the best Gnar in the PCS.
Absolutely. And the Vex takeaway makes a lot of sense. I would say if they're considering for a last ban, PSG are looking at either the Rise or the Ahri pick here. I personally would go ahead, leave up. Okay, they don't go for either. Instead, it will be the Veigar banned away. Veigar has a decent matchup into the Ahri, just because you throw up the Ahri or throw up the cage, and the Ahri can't move around. But it will be what we sort of expect here from Nesty is that Rise. Of course, Bay, also a champion that he has played a lot, his most played, and that's the big overlap with this mid lane pool. A lot of this Rise and a decent chunk of Ahri, but looks like the answer from Bay could be a Victor, so it would be a lot of scaling.
He does have one game on it, and PSG playing for the scaling is an interesting choice, as Deep Cross are usually the team that want to get that scaling into the late game, but of course they've picked some slightly different champions, so we will get that matchup. A lot of damage, a lot of wave clear. It's going to be hard for Nesty to push that lane in, but Nesty never wants to push the lane in. This guy doesn't even live in his own lane, so we have to see what the final answer is. It's everything but the top side. Leaky and Hanabi, big carries in their own rights when they want to be, and I do think a blind Tryndamere, I mean, it's bold, but why not? And it is going to get the lock-in. Seems like PSG have themselves the makings of a 4-1 composition here.
You nailed it right on the head. They have the makings of the 4-1 with...
Whoa! Let's go! Nice start. We got a Sejuani answer. I love this.
The Sejuani locked in. I fully expect that to go into the top lane. It could be a Viego pivot into one of these solo lanes. It could also technically be a Rise moved up to that top side, but that's something I don't expect.
Nah, I mean, Nesty would play Sejuani. Come on, let's be honest.
True. Very, very true. Let's go back real quick to PSG's composition. They drafted a Tryndamere, but then you look at how to set up the Tryndamere, and it's a whole lot of wave clear. You have a Victor and you have a Xayah. So I love the 4-1 setup coming in from the side of PSG. But now let's talk about the real meat of this draft, which is that last pick Sejuani. The first time they played, they went for a last pick Malphite. Did not play out as we hoped. I hope this time it goes much better for them. But we also saw this showcased in the MFT matchup in the lower bracket, where they brought out this Sejuani Viego combination, and it's all about empowering the Viego to gank that top lane over and over again. And against a Tryndamere who is squishy before level 6, this could be the play to just hard snowball around this top side of the map.
And it is exactly the way that Deep Cross like to play, right? When we do compare the likes of top laners here, Leaky is the one that gets a lot more resources than Hanabi. Hanabi tends to be the weak side king. This season and last Worlds notwithstanding, where he's able to snowball a lot of his games, he knows how to play losing matchups. However, if they neutralize this Tryndamere, it's going to kind of be 4v5, and I really like this change-up for Deep Cross, because it allows them to play a style that not only are they comfortable with, but they can shift resources into Hana on a carry champion. Let's take a look at our level 1 as we are on to the Rift for Game 1 of PSG versus Deep Cross Gaming here in the PCS Spring Split. Oh boy. Going for the early roam. I do think this bottom lane is still really important, though, Nightstar. I like the change up to the Misfortune. It gives Kriskata a fighting chance here. It gives them a lot of answer to poke, but you gotta think Unified Kaiwing on Zyra Khan is pretty terrifying. So that's not going to be a cakewalk for sure.
Absolutely. You give Kaiwing any sort of engaged support, and it feels like you're just in for a whole lot of pain. But we'll see how it actually plays out here. As I mean, I am so excited for this DCG draft because we have MF, which I think has been really underutilized globally at the moment, and then we also get the Sejuani top lane. So these two very niche picks, I would say, are showing up in game one. And one of the issues that DCG has had is setting up an engage conditions when Nesty isn't super far ahead, right? And I think Sejuani can remedy that.
Absolutely, and Leaky has definitely come to play to try and set up and shut down Hanabi or wherever he goes, because he is running the Ignite Sejuani. Hanabi's going for the mobility, man. He's got the old Dade summoners with those ghost flashes. If I've not just dated myself horribly there.
The old mid lane summoners, yeah. But yeah, this is of course par for the course for Trindamirs nowadays, and level 2 hit by both of these bot laners does mean that we shouldn't see a ton of action, which is going to be good here for DCG. Last time, of course, they did get 2v2 killed, which is never a good sign.
Gotta play safe.
Yeah, and I think it threw a big wrench in their plan, right? If your bot lane gets double killed, you aren't able to throw as much attention up into that top side, because now you need to help out your bot lane just a little bit to give them more room to stand up.
Yeah, so really important is going to be watching what Hana's able to get done here. He does have double buffs for the level 3 gank. Coming in with Viego is an opportunity. How well can Leaky bait this is the question. Hanabi's a very, very smart top laner. I don't think he's going to fall into the obvious trap of trying to get the solo kill under tower. Instead, he settles for the farm advantage, so it's not going to open up an opportunity. Meanwhile, Kaiwing does go in, gets rooted, pulled in by the point-blank hook, and Kriskata makes it rain, but Unified is still able to even out on the trade.
Yeah, still a fairly good result coming in for DCG, but you can see there that trade isn't to get any sort of health advantage. It's really just to say, all right, we just trade a bunch of health at each other, but I'm already on a reset, so I don't need to expend any other health potions, and I can just come back full HP, whereas you're still going to be stuck in lane, and now we've generated that health advantage that is going to result possibly in a 2v2 kill later.
Yeah, Deep Cross definitely have to be thinking about that bot side, right? Like, they just need to not give Unified the edges. Going for the reset makes a lot of sense here. You also see Nesty does manage to get a little bit of extra farm there while Bay has gone for the back himself. So 4 minutes into this game, it has been a little bit more of a quiet tug-of-war, a little back and forth. Definitely pay attention to the ward placement. You see Deep Cross with a heavy focus on top side. They pinged out Juhan, so they know he's over by his blue buff right now. But unfortunately, Hana isn't in really a position to do a whole lot anywhere else on the map. He does actually back with his Sheen buy. So Leaky just going to try to hold the line. He's actually done a great job of equalizing in the farm game.
Yeah, and Sejuani, one of those, has a...
Ooh, okay, good permafrost. There. Yeah, that's really nice. This is pre-6 for Trindamir, too.
He has the level advantage at the moment, and he's going to try to get a kill, but...
Yeah, baited right in, and Juhan tags forward. Leaky's got no flash. Hanabi dances right to the outside. This is going to be a little first blood, and he hits him with the Flash Wolves. Hanabi just using his experience to bait out Leaky.
Yeah, unfortunately, Leaky in a bit of a precarious lane position there, and it's not going to get much better because that lane is, I think, going to be frozen right outside the tower, so that's why we see this teleport coming in from Leaky. Fortunately, Hanabi doesn't have the teleport to answer back, so I mean, he doesn't lose out on a ton just because of the lane state is still very good, but Leaky will, at the very least, be able to crash this wave, and now Nesty could be in trouble.
Okay, he walks out of the
Oh,
gravity
wow.
field, but there goes a flash battle dance, and Nesty 3v1. Juhan will finally cut him down to size, and it's PSG really opening up hostilities here on 2 lanes now, Nightstar. Hana was just too late to the party.
Yeah, and that's actually massive. Leaky is going to be level 6 at the very least, so he has some...
So is Hanabi.
Okay.
All right, he's got
All
the
right.
chicken on. Permafrost down there. Arctic Assault flashing.
Oh,
into
no,
it.
he
He whiffs the Ice Bola, and Leaky's gonna get soloed this time.
Oh. Pyra, that's tragic. That was absolute tragedy right there.
No, you know what that was? That was ice cold by Hanabi. He's going to get that push in. Leaky has no teleport. This won't be... Actually, yeah, it's going to be a plate right off the bat. And Deep Cross, not quite, but there we go. 3-0 in this game at 6.5 minutes. We thought it was going to be a bit of a quieter early game. Hana's still not level 6.
Hana will be 6 very shortly. Yep, he does hit 6 right there, but... This top lane is going south, and remember, this is kind of the top side matchup that they like to try and play around, and that they wanted to snowball around because you have that synergy with the Viego Sejuani. Sejuani being able to get her passive off a lot faster with the Viego, auto into Q, and then you just have the whole idea, you know, Rise wants to play around that top side as well. Now, we'll see if they're able to shift gears and maybe turn their attention bot side. But because of that hook whiff, it means that they don't have the setup into the MF ultimate. So once it comes into mid game for DCG, that'll be the real big question, because they do have a decent amount of lockdown for this MF ultimate, but they do need to hit those CCs.
They do. Leaky able to get some point blank off himself, but Hanabi's more than happy to trade into him and try to force him away, keeping ahead of the farm game. Definitely a silver lining for Deep Cross is the state of the bot lane, though, as it has traded very evenly, both of them sitting on the serrated Dirk right now, going to offer an opportunity to roam up river, as they do have quite a lot of ward coverage, but are spotted nonetheless by PSG as Hana tries to open up on Rift Herald. This is a bit of a dangerous play here, as Hanabi's sniffing around.
They do have the ability to do Rift Herald quickly if they bring the Sejuani, because the Sejuani concept is able to just burst through it very quickly, but when you also have 5 members, that helps as well. The matter is,
for Hanabi.
PSG,
oh
do
boy.
they go?
Yeah, they do on 2 fronts right now. Hanabi going to be cut off. However, they flash away from the ultimate of Juhan as he tries to cut off Hana at the pass, and Leaky, no, can't quite get the wall. They're going to sacrifice him for the cause, and that was so close to so many more deaths.
Oh, Hana, he flashed into the wall. That could have been really, really bad for DCG. Fortunately for them, they are able to secure the Rift Herald and only lose out on 1 kill. So all in all, it becomes a pretty even trade, right? Because 2 plates is going to be 320 gold. So gold value wise, it comes out to be about even, but as we get to see the replay, they try and collapse onto Hanabi, but because of this split, Nesty, Cascada, they focus their fire towards the bot half of the fight, and that means Hanabi, using that ultimate, able to output a lot of damage down there, which makes things very chaotic for DCG, and unfortunately, their carries weren't able to help out their front.
Yeah, when Hana can't quite flash the wall, he's forced to ultimate out. I mean, talk about a heartbreaker, right? So Leaky continues to be the sacrificial champion, but now Hana has finally arrived on the scene. They want to make this Herald play up top, and Hanabi does not have ultimate. Crucially here, he should be playing it safe, has to know something's likely coming. And there we go. It's revealed on the control ward. But they might be able to force him out and force the issue anyways. Instead, they actually just start to move down to the mid lane.
Yeah, and this is a bit rough for the side of DCG because, again, while they have a lot of CC for this Tryndamere, the Tryndamere is 2-0-2. So he already feels really, really big right now, which could be very problematic. I'm interested in seeing what this build ends up turning out here, because we have the Axe come out for Hanabi, and traditionally, when you look at Tryndamere builds, you're looking to spec straight into the crit itemization, and the Hearthstone Axe does not build into any of those big crit items.
Yeah, that is interesting. We'll have to see what it ends up being. I think, I would trust Hanabi's choices on a lot of these builds, especially on the champions that are going to get ahead and split push down the lane. But he has such a massive farm lead at the moment that any items whatsoever he's going to be building towards probably going to give him a bit more value than Leaky just sitting on a couple of components himself. And, well, at the very least, they do manage to get the Rift Herald charged down the mid, take off a lot of plates there. I believe that did fall into Nesty's pocket as well. But they do lose out on Dragon Pressure, so Drake stack is cut. It's going to be a Mountain Rift, a lot more terrain for both teams to play with. And I actually think this kind of favors PSG, right? Because Juhan can always ult the wall.
Yeah, there's certainly some things that you can play around for both of these squads, right? For DCG, with the extra terrain, it will make things a little bit easier for them to just kind of lock down and control some of these choke points with a Sejuani. But again, the Sejuani put a little bit far behind, and it also helps out the MF, right? If you are able to play around these jungle choke points where the terrain does become relevant, you almost can't escape out of the MF ultimate because of that extra terrain. So that will be something to keep watch of. But I will say that I did a quick look up on what builds out of the Hearthbound Axe, and okay, we might see a 1v1.
Yeah, okay. Unified onto Cascada. Into the Featherstorm. He just preemptively rooted in place, and oh no, he burns the Flash as well! Oh, it's going from bad to worse. Nightstar 5-0 now for PSG Talon.
That was not a 2v2 kill, Pyra. I think that was even worse.
A 1v1 kill, yeah.
80 carry battle, won out by Unified. And that, I would say, is one of the big drawbacks coming out from a MF, right? While she is fantastic in these team fights, offers a lot of wombo potential, she's not as good in these 1v1s because of how her abilities work. And as we see them set up,
trying to two-step. Oh, good flash! Okay. Really good flash there as Hana tanks on. Juhan tanks on a little bit of the tower.
Whizzes by.
Oh boy, yeah, really nice. But had to burn that one. All the same. But yeah, I think.
Could be cut out?
And he is. That might be the opportunity to pick up a kill for themselves. Oh no, he's still actually managing with the quickness. No, tick on the ignite does get away from this one. Opens up a push down the mid lane. Wow, Deep Cross are finding at least something back, but still a pretty decent deficit to climb out of. And Nightstar, I know you really wanted to get to the Hearthbound Axe, and it does look like we kind of have our answer, right? Because by process of elimination, we're pretty much looking at a Stride Breaker at this point.
Yeah, it is going to be that Stride Breaker because of that Iron Whip added onto it. So he's going to have sticking potential. It's just kind of a matter of what he's going to be sticking onto, right? Because if you get onto the MF, yes, that is going to be a big priority target. However, a lot of these other targets are kind of just tanky, so it doesn't really matter. I feel like if you get that crit damage, you're able to burst through some of these tankier targets. Cascada is in trouble once more, and he will at least be able to survive this time around, but
when he's on a roam,
you're down 2.5k gold for the side of DCG, and we know they can play from behind, right? This is a squad that understands the macro, understands what openings they can try and take advantage of, and
could be caught again though. Gotta be careful. Okay. Hana is able to get into his hard path. Meanwhile, though, Unified does knock down first brick by just sheer force of feathers at that point. Cascada has absolutely been outplayed in this bottom side, but he has been able to at least minimize some of those losses here, and I think that is pretty critical, right? Like, the biggest deficit is up in that top side. Hanabi on the 2-0 with Stride Breaker here is going to make it very difficult for Deep Cross to force anything without dealing with him. But Deep Cross are trying to form a bit of a phalanx here in the mid side. Juhan spotted on a control ward. Hana's here, trading back into the hook, tapping forward. They don't really have the damage to take him down as he is one of the tankier members on that turbo chem tank. Cascada, meanwhile, trying to keep the waves nice and clear. They would have one heck of a wombo combo if they can pull it off. But so far, PSG have been the ones pulling the combo themselves, and they do manage to get the knockback on, and SD goes into the stasis. A full bullet time channel from Cascada means they can take down Juhan, but the second wind here as they teleport out on the party portal. Hana does die. Both junglers go down in the 16-minute engage.
Yeah, it does look like PSG are still interested in turning around for the dragon, though, and this would be massive for them, being able to get that next, or getting the second dragon, because when I was considering these dragon fights, I'm thinking, you know, PSG, with how far ahead this Tryndamere is, you kind of just want to set things aside, but we're going into the replay. They just find a clear angle onto Nesty, but a fantastic bullet time coming in from Cascada makes this fight somewhat close. And but the fact of the matter is, when your Rise isn't doing any damage during this mid-game portion, you know, that's the one portion of the game where he does do a lot of damage, right?
Yeah,
so
Nesty not known for damage dealing, unfortunately. I think that the tragedy there was, like, Hana kind of got caught popping the Rift Herald in mid, and when the fight broke out, he was clearly not in a position to take advantage. Nearly gets away, and then Bay snipes him with the Death Laser. I mean, that's the tragedy right there. It could have been actually a 1-0 for Deep Cross.
Yeah, and as a result, PSG get themselves the second dragon on top of that, which is fantastic, because if you look at that DCG team, the MF, yes, she's great in some of these mid-game fights, but late game, she does drop off a little bit here, and then you know, Tank Rise isn't that late-game carry either. So, damage profile-wise, DCG drop off a cliff. However, we have seen them be able to pull off these scaling deficit compositions like we saw against CFO in one of their earlier matchups in the regular split. But this is, of course, against PSG, who are also very, very macro sound, and that's kind of where DCG have been able to take advantage of, is against these other teams that aren't as macro sound. That's when they can find these openings on the map.
Yeah, Deep Cross definitely, I think, while they are a relatively smart macro team in this league, they focus a little bit more attention on the draft and interesting strategies that do work because other teams don't know what to do against them. PSG aren't one of those teams, though. PSG have a really good sense of where to be on the map, of when to engage these fights. They're, you know, not infallible by any means, but they're just pound for pound so strong and so good at reading the map state at any given point in the game, and that is what's gotten them to this point so far in the league, only dropping 2 games in the regular split, and looking for a solid game 1 here in their first playoff match. But Deep Cross, they're going to be moving down to the bot for the dive. Bay, he smells trouble, and he's going to be waiting in that brush, but meanwhile, a lot of pings flying as the rest of PSG realize no one's at home in the mid lane.
Yeah, and it's because of this great vision coverage, right? They protect with defensive vision, but they're still going.
Yeah, they are into the instant charm. Charge down from the onslaught of shadows. Bullet time cutting down some health bars, but will it be enough? They've already lost 20 in the engage, and here comes Hanabi. Forget the 4-1. This is a team fighting Tryndamere. They do manage to get a shutdown onto Leaky, but Juhan charges down the line. Hanabi stays alive through it all. And even though they lose Bay, it doesn't matter one bit. Deep Cross Gaming have suffered far more grievous losses.
And DCG, they try and pull the trigger, right? They thought that they were able to get the pick, but unfortunately the collapse is there, and now we're going to get more fighting. They could just ace them right here.
They might just do it. Leaky has nowhere to go, and Nesty trying to push his luck just a little bit. In Rune Prison goes Juhan, but Nesty sidesteps for a couple seconds, misses out on the overload, can't quite get the kill. Oh dear, Nightstar, it's just a day late and $1 short in every one of these fights.
Oh man, he barely misses out on the trade, and that's yet another big victory for PSG as we will go into the replay. It looked like this was such a great move, right? You throw out the round warp, you go straight onto Unified, but it's just way too telegraphed. They just immediately go in with the Recon combination. They're CC'd, and Bay also does a lot of work at the start of this fight, zoning off Cascada. He wasn't able to get a great ultimate in that fight, which meant that Unified, yes, he was put under a lot of duress, but the damage wasn't there to just burst him out, and so he was able to survive the CC. And that's all that DCG do have, right? Because their one damage threat is the MF. Other than that, they just pile in with a lot of crowd control.
Hana has not been able to find the right angle in these fights to start deleting people, and part of that's because of just how well protected PSG have put their carries. They're also letting them itemize towards it. The Banshee's Veil now completed for Bay, as he is probably the most vulnerable member at the moment. Certainly a priority target, even over the Xayah, as the scaling game will get underway. But a pretty solid advantage here of 5,500 gold, not to mention the Dragon Edge in the stack. Here comes Hanabi on the flank right now. Deep Cross getting
Woody's
sandwiched, and they
chipped
don't
out.
even realize it. Burning a lot of their cooldowns already. Woody's down, and in goes the combo! And they just land a massive onslaught of shadows into the feathers for days. Juhan is the one getting the kill credit there on Kriskata, but the rest, a Deep Cross, are running for the hills, and Hanabi is left to chase down the stragglers, as they don't even need the Dragon stack. They're going for the Baron. Hanabi, he wants himself a 1-for-2.
Yeah, he of course has the Undying Rage, so he'll be able to finish off the ace for PSG. Actually, it wasn't an ace, as Nesty was able to survive, but it's still a 4-for-0 trade and a Baron. I think game one is pretty much all but done and dusted.
It does seem to look that way. Man, that whole strategy hinged on getting Hana fed, using the combination of Viego and Sejuani to shut down Hanabi, and we're at a 5-0 Tryndamere. Let's take a look at this beautiful engage. Deep Cross have absolutely no idea what's coming for them.
Yeah, the moment Woody's hook lands into the wall, he doesn't have the ability to fall back, and the dive comes in with Juhan and Hanabi, and the pressure is just too much onto this backline. Again, there's not a whole lot of damage because you are running with that tank rise, so Hanabi understands that he can just run on in with his Tryndamere, and they aren't going to be able to burst him out. And that's one of the scary things when you are playing against a Tryndamere. If you don't have the burst damage, then it just makes Tryndamere's life that much easier, because you can just kind of slowly maximize your Undying Rage ult timer, because the damage just doesn't ever surprise you.
Yeah, I was wrong about this being a 4-1 comp, Nightstar. This is I mean, yeah, he's on the sideline now, but this is a full-on team fighting Tryndamere, man. Just run at them, Forehead.
Yeah.
Gonna be able to take down the tower. They got a Dragon as well. PSG, they might not even need the soul at the rate this game is going, and Deep Cross so far behind. Juhan, very speedy pony off to the races, looking to set up another charge down as they have all ultimates online.
Yeah, and I mean, at this moment, Hanabi, he understands that all he needs to do is be able to just be as annoying as possible, and this build is pretty much it. DCG, we'll see if they go for it.
Oh, the bullet gets dodged out. Nicely done by Unified into the charm onto Woody. A massive amount of damage on the follow-up. The bullet
the back
does cut them back, but Hanabi is just absolutely wrecking house with the Undying Rage. They do not lose a member. And that's going to be the inner tower here, and then some.
Yeah, it will eventually go down with the next wave of minions, and it looks like they are... I'm not sure what they're turning their attention to, but because of their somewhat low health bars, it was still a relatively competitive fight coming in from DCG. The numbers don't go their way, but with how much damage they have dealt to them in that fight, it does mean PSG do have to lay off and give up the rest of the push. And I mean, this was just so well executed coming in from Unified. He pretty much plays scapegoat here in this instance, being the bait, eats up a whole lot of cooldowns, and he just dodges out by pressing R. So he dodges out on so much of the CC tools coming in from DCG, and they just don't have it for the rest of the fight. It still ends up almost looking okay for them, but again, like, they're only able to stem the tide or stem the bleeding just a short bit, but now PSG back on the rift.
And watching Unified play is beautiful. This guy has such an immaculate understanding of position as a bot laner, as a traditional squishy sort of champion player, and he just, like, he so rarely makes these mistakes. And that's why it's so beautiful to watch when he gets something like the Xayah. He's got that Featherstorm in his back pocket. It's just like looking like he's made an error, but he just completely baits Deep Cross over and over again. Meanwhile, we do have a 4-1 after all, Nightstar, because the Tryndamere's free hitting mid lane. PSG have just never presented really much weakness in this game, and it's such a massive snowball of the gold game. creating death brushes wherever they want, keeping the pressure on multiple
They might
lanes.
be herded in.
There's always the threat of Juhan around the side for the big onslaught of shadows. Unified again, answers onto the Featherstorm.
Oh.
You do see Juhan in Rune Prison for just a couple seconds. That might be the opportunity here as they go
the
in,
counter
getting the
engage.
two-man charm, and that's going to be just enough
That's it.
damage as Unified is able to fire them down. Hanabi, Juhan into the back line, and it looks like a magic trick because all of Deep Cross Gaming have disappeared off the rift.
Will be a double kill for Kaiwing as he puts on an absolute show in this game number 1, finding engage time after time, punishing DCG's over aggression. And 26 minutes in, I think this should just be the game, although death timer is somewhat low. And PSG, with their, of course, methodical playstyle, it does look like they will allow DCG to live yet another couple minutes.
Yeah, really allow is the key word there because they've just been handling them so hard. Again, Unified just completely denies the permafrost, the ice bola. That's going to be a lot of flashes extended. Kaiwing tags in, earns himself a double kill on the back half. And look at Juhan again with the flanks. Hanabi joining him. It's just beautiful to watch this team play a team fight. Yes, they're ahead, but it's because they keep doing stuff like that.
Yeah, and a great engage onto Nesty as well to deny the round warp, because round warp, if Rise does get CC'd, the round warp does not go off, which meant that Cascada and Woody would not be able to exit that area, and that's what happens. They're going to try and get a pick on Hanabi, but he's level 17, Pyra. This man is so strong, and now DCG, they might just get flanked upon.
Yeah, Woody's level 9, I want to point out. That's almost double at this point. Oh dear, and they're going to get turned on again. That is another big bait, and they fall for it. Hook, line, and sinker, and Unified and crew just pick them absolutely apart. Nightstar Leaky lives for just a few more seconds, but only Hana is left to defend the base, and he's nowhere near it. This is lights out, and at 28 minutes, PSG have their fastest win against Deep Cross on the split to open up this playoff series in dominating fashion.
Man, we set this game up to be, well, DCG, they've got some win conditions. They'll play towards topside. They have great CC combination. Mid-game, the MF could play a big role. None of that happened. It was just an absolute shellacking, absolute clapdown coming in from PSG Talon, and they have full Talons out.
I gotta say, I think I know why Hanabi was playing without the lights on, because it was fully lights out in that top lane from minute 1. He gets a little bit of help from his jungler, and then all of a sudden he's turning solo kills. The whole game plan hinged on getting Hana some kills, shutting down the Tryndamere. And everything else didn't really matter. It didn't matter that much that the Misfortune was able to at least stay relatively even despite being outplayed in a 1v1, because Unified wasn't the win condition on that time around, and Cascada wasn't the win condition for Deep Cross. It was all about getting that 4-1 or the team fight, I suppose, and contesting out on the objectives. Just brilliant flanks, counter engages, using all their tools to the fullest in those ultimates, and just keeping all the carries alive. I don't think I saw Leaky nail a Glacial Prison, and not because it was bad, but because they just were able to protect so well on every priority target. PSG are just on another level.
And it doesn't help that Unified was really the only option that they could target, right? Because he was always standing very far forward, so you were so tempted to unload it and try and get the catch onto this AD carry, but Unified time and time again pressed R at the correct moment, dodged out on pretty much every single CC that they had, and that was just a pure CC composition coming in from DCG. When it gets ahead, it is very oppressive, right? Because you just constantly lock down targets and they just cannot escape from you. But when put behind, you simply do not have the damage to force those flips that you need to get back into the game.
And they did keep trying, definitely credit where it's due for Deep Cross, but they just were in such a deficit. I wonder if we don't see them go back to the scaling days of old, what they really became more known for this split. I also kind of want to see Nesty on something besides the Rise. It's his most played champion. just because it's so ubiquitous in the meta, but it just doesn't feel like it gives him a lot of oomph, a lot of abilities to do interesting things. He had some clutch realm warps, especially on the disengage, but it just really wasn't enough. So I'd like to see them pull out one of those like Nesty-centered global engage compositions. He's not going to get the likes of the TF. The Ari's probably going to continue to hit the ban column because it's such a contested champion. But there's plenty of stuff. I mean, even like the Ivern, I think would be an interesting one. I see Deep Cross playing some interesting stuff going forward. But for PSG, you called it Nightstar. They didn't really have to show any cards because they weren't necessarily tested. And I expect them fully to just do the same kind of stuff for this next game.
Yeah, they didn't have to do anything fancy here. I mean, even in the mid lane, right? Bay, he goes on to a Victor. Why? Because he doesn't need to do a whole lot. Nesty isn't a laner that's going to give him a whole lot of trouble during the lane phase, so he doesn't need to go on to something like an Ari to have that potential combat power. Or, of course, Ari did get banned, but that sort of champion to be able to fight back in the lane phase to prevent Nesty from roaming. But they were just like, you know what, Nesty, you can have the roams. We'll just have this Victor here to play towards our comp. And because Hanabi was able to get rolling a lot faster than expected, all he has to do is play defensive. You saw it in his itemization, right? Like the Banshee's Veil, when behind, is a really bad purchase. But when you're already steamrolled, all you want to do is just make sure you don't get caught. And he understood those conditions and played to that.
Yeah, and that is what PSG do. They never really present an opening, a point of weakness for other teams to attack, and that's what makes it so frustrating to try and take them down, because you have to grind them down with repeatedly just edging them out on a fight. PSG, I mean, they even had a chance to really end it, but instead they opted for the 2 inhibitors. I mean, that really tells you what this team's mentality is. It's a much more measured style. You have to think it's probably at least somewhat influenced by the Korean Challenger players that they brought into their mid and jungle. Bay and Juhan definitely did what they needed to. Very impressed with Juhan's flanking on this Hecarim. He goes for the Dead Man's Plate build, just is zooming around the rift, and really Deep Cross did not know what hit him, especially after this guy got snowballing. Hanabi on the Tryndamere continues to be a top lane terror. He has 73% kill participation, Nightstar. This is a champion that you're supposed to see in the side lanes.
Yeah, this is one of those champs that just goes, all right, I'm just going to 1v1 anyone who comes into my lane. Other than that, I will see you guys at the Nexus. But Hanabi did not play to that playstyle, even went for the early Stride Breaker for his mythic choice, just to dive into the backline, stick onto these backline targets, and give them absolute hell. And what you know, they were given a lot of hell.
Yeah, he's going to have to change his name from Hanabi to Hana Wasp because he was stinging them over and over again. that was just honestly like you try to target this guy and he's like, no, I am going to target you. This is one of the reasons PSG are so terrifying. Is that they're some of the best in class in just about every role on the map. So you can't shut down any individual. Deep Cross is certainly going to have to try in the next game. We'll be right back with that one after a short break.